Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to honor a man who is so loved, so revered by this community, so embraced by the people around him that he had to organize his own party. Twice named National Coach of the Year and nobody cared. Tonight, a lot of people are going to tell stories about John. In fact, so many people are going to tell stories, I'm going to keep mine short. But just a couple of things that people may not know. John holds 3 different records in the Danville area. He holds the first record for being the first coach ever to approach a basketball floor prior to a game, holding a sign, "We ain't dead yet," and popping out of a coffin. And you'll remember this one. He is also the very first coach in the Danville area to actually surf out into the middle of the floor prior to a Danville Kankakee basketball game. The first beach bum known to be National Coach of the Year. And he also holds the record of answering a question that Mike Hulvey posed to him. "Coach, tell us about the game last night." And 43 minutes later, he wrapped it up.
Don't be doing that, Scott. Don't be doing that.
How long was that answer? Even Fowler Canal can't tell you what the hell he said. That is how long that answer was. Well, we're going to get into talking about John a great deal tonight, although I have to admit, many of us know John went to Antigua, and Mike's got several Antigua stories. My only question was not having had the opportunity to go, but having the opportunity to see the pictures here tonight. My only thought was, in every picture I saw, Susan was half naked and Dick Shockey was half drunk. Basketball down there. We're going to be co-hosting tonight. Like we said, we're not going to take much time because we got plenty of people who are going to be here, but I do want to introduce my cohort in crime. Please give a nice big round of applause for Mr. Michael Hulvey.
All right, as Scott said, we were going to be here a long time. Julie, my wife, said, "How long are we going to be here tonight?" And I said, "Well, John's got 19 speakers lined up. I think 1 a.m. is a conservative guess." And Scott was right. How many people do you know that put their own birthday party together and their own roast? And then line up all their speakers and never tell them that they're going to be speaking. You guys are lucky. You got at least a word, but John did. It's Scott and I's pleasure to work with John during our radio coverage of his activities, but also to know John as a person, and it's the nicest thing that anyone will say tonight about him, so we will leave it at that. As Scott said, I was able to go to Antigua thanks to John. I went down and held a media workshop over the Labor Day holiday, and Julie and I went and stayed at Sandals and had an absolutely wonderful time. Julie found out that they have these floating bars in Antigua that you get on your little mat, you float up, and you get your drink, a little banana, strawberry, you float back. It was very nice. We thank John for that. But when we land at the airport, these little kids come running up to us and say, "You know Coach John? You know Coach John? You know Coach John?" I never realized what a superstar you are. We heard about Shockey being drunk, but we didn't know that you were indeed a superstar. Hat, please. Now, this is a birthday party. Thank you. This is a birthday party, is it not? 50 years of John Spezia. That's about enough. I hold in my hand an Antigua, and by the way, it's Antigua, as I learned from John right before we went down. I always thought it was Antigua, but it's Antigua, or Antigua. It's Antigua. That's the same as beer in me. Anyway, the #1 sport in Antigua is not basketball. It is cricket. And as John found out, cricket is an international game that we Americans know absolutely nothing about, and most of us don't care to learn because it takes, you know, a John Spezia interview is about as long as a cricket match. And they last 5 days. when I was in Antigua, we were bestowed upon us a official cricket hat. Now, this looks like a fishing hat, but it is a cricket hat. And I was telling Julie, I said, you know, this is not just a cricket hat. This is a birthday party hat. And since today's John Spezia'S birthday, or at least we're celebrating John Spezia'S birthday, I think John needs to wear an Antiguan birthday hat through the whole evening. Are we with me here, people? Now, you wear this for right now. Who would rather see him in this than something else? John Spezia in his Antiguan birthday hat. Now, when I was down in Antigua and the little children were talking about Coach John, I heard an interesting story about John's heritage. And this was a story that was told by Mr. Brand, who is the contact between the college and the Antigua government. And he said, did you ever hear the story about John's great-great-grandfather? And of course, the Antigua is right in the middle of the Caribbean, which means there's a lot of shipping and a lot of sailing and great stories that come from that. And perhaps some of you have heard these stories before that have worked their way to the north, but John's great-great-great-grandfather was a famous sea captain. And one day, John's great-great-grandfather, Captain Spezia, was at the helm of his ship. And he was sailing along, and all of a sudden, the first mate, Richard Shockey, came running up and he said, Captain Spezia, there's an enemy ship approaching, an enemy ship. And the brave Captain Spezia looks at the young lad and he says, easy, my son. Go into my cabin and retrieve my red shirt. But Captain Spezia, an enemy ship is approaching. Easy, my red shirt. All right. So little Richard Shockey runs downstairs and he gets his red shirt. He comes back up and he puts the red shirt. He gives the red shirt to Captain Spezia, and Captain Spezia puts it on. Well, what's that for? Little Dick Shockey asks. He said, well, there's an enemy ship approaching. There will be fighting. If there's fighting, I will be involved in that, and I do not want the men to see me bleed. Therefore, I will wear the red shirt. Well, a short time after that, another first mate came running up and said, Captain Spezia, there are 5 enemy ships approaching, 5 enemy ships. And with calm and coolness in his heart, gleam in his eye, he looks at the young lad and he says, to my cabin and retrieve my brown pants. That is a true story. All right, I need everybody to stand up. All right, before we get started, everybody stand up. We had a good meal. Everybody okay with that? We had a good meal? Drinks were cool, cold, and refreshing. Down in Antigua, Julie and I got a chance to meet the members of a band called... No, it was our band. No, I remember. There it is. Oh, yes, LA Crew. Great bunch of guys. And through some of our activities down there, which were always festive, we learned some of the native moves. But what I want to do is I want us to get ready to hear some great stories about John Spezia. All right, and I also want us to put our frame of mind of being in the Caribbean. Okay, Susan Robinson, come here. This is probably the least known person in the room. Okay, and for those that went with Susan when they were down in Antigua for the big trip, she was known as Sid, because Susan is a member of the Sports Information Department at the University of Illinois, and she represented the media and sent back press releases and filed stories on Team USA when they were down. Right, Sid?
Yeah.
Okay, you didn't know you were going to do this tonight, did you?
No.
Okay, good. But Sid had a great time. We have pictures available of Sid's time. Brad Davis has photos available. They will be for sale in the outer lobby. Okay, but you are someone who has leadership ability and leadership skills. That's why you went to Antigua to represent the media. That's why you're in front of everyone tonight. Okay. They need a little bit of something to get them ready to enjoy some wonderful stories about John Spezia. Okay. All right, LA Crew, here we go. This song is one they sing and they play all the time. It's called the Freedom Song. Now we're all going to do a little moving around. We're going to be led by our leader, Susan Robinson from the University of Illinois. Come on, everybody. Let's do it to the Freedom Song. Go. Everybody, come on now. Come on. Come on, everybody. Albertine, let's see a movie, baby. Come on now. Come on. Back in the room. Scott Olson, let's go. National High School basketball coach. That's standing still. There you go. There, Jeff Rekweg, let's go. Come on, everybody. There we go. Ted Swanson from Big R. Come on, man. There we go. There we go. Howard Pinnell. There we go. Look at that. Hey! Very well. All right, sit down. Thank you. All right. Hey, if Fowler Pinnell can shake it, baby, anybody can shake it. All right, we do have a long list of speakers tonight, and we're going to get right to them. And we have actually put this in some sort of a logical order.
No.
Yes, it is. All right? And we're going to work to a big crescendo, baby. All right, the main event. So, and there is a reason why Scott and I are in officials uniforms, because if it gets too long and boring, Scott, show what happens. That means you're out of the game and next one comes up. Okay. That's it. All right, without further ado, we begin. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with John Spezia'S best friend in the world. Well, probably Nancy. However, when Nancy's not available, Jim McCarthy will do. Ladies and gentlemen, the best friend of John Spezia'S.
And I tell you what, John and Mike, I won't take nearly as much time. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm on my way. I won't take nearly as much time before you vote. Okay, rough enough. Three coaches flew to the NCAA convention. The plane crashed and all three died. All three noticed God in the clouds sitting in a chair. God motioned for one of them to come into the clouds. God wanted to know three things. Who are you? What did you do? What did people think of you? The first person that appeared before God said, I'm Denny LEHNUS, one of the most successful junior college coaches in Division I history, and I'm a really nice guy. Fine, God said. He said, stand to my right. The next person said, I'm Big NAGY. I'm one of the architects of the Flying Illini 89 Final Four team, and still a successful coach at UIC. Everybody loves me. And fine, God said. He said, stand on my left. The third person stepped before God and said, I'm John Spezia'S. I won a national championship, finished second, finished third, and I had two other trips in the 90s. All my players love me, and the people in Danville, Illinois think I'm sitting in your chair. The key to John's success, a little known or seen prayer that he has hanging from his office wall, it goes like this. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to accept the things I cannot accept, and the wisdom to hide the bodies of those people that I had to kill today because they pissed me off. And also help me to be careful the toes I step on today, as they may be connected to the ass I have to kiss tomorrow. Big shot. Help me to always give 100% at work, 12% on Monday, 23% on Tuesday, 40% on Wednesday, 20% on Thursday, and 5% on Friday. And please, help me to remember when I'm having a really, really bad day, and it seems that people are trying to piss me off, that it takes 42 muscles to frown, and only 4 to extend my middle finger and tell them, bite me. John and referees, Kevin Carlton told me this story. In the 1991 championship game, Kevin went to head official Jim BAIN and said, Coach Spezia'S wants to know if there's any penalty for thinking. Jim smiles and says, absolutely not. Well, then Coach Spezia'S says, thinks you're an idiot. This is one special story that John and I share together. This is John on horseback in Machismo. John decides to try horseback riding, even though he's had no lessons or prior experience. He mounts a horse unassisted, immediately springs into motion. As he gallops along at a steady pace, John begins to slip from the saddle. And Terry grabs the horse's mane, but can't get a firm grip. He tries to throw his arms around the horse's neck, but he slides down the side of the horse anyway. Finally, giving up his frail grip, he tries to leap off the horse and throw himself to safety. Unfortunately, his foot has become entangled in the stirrup and is now at the mercy of the horse's pounding hooves as his head hits the ground over and over and over. He is moments away from unconsciousness when, to his great fortune, Wendell, the Walmart greeter, sees him and unplugs the horse. Speaking of John being smart, there are two graduates from Eureka College, in which John is a graduate of, Ronald Reagan and John Spezia'S. I'm not sure in which, John maybe first, Ronald second, vice versa, whatever the case may be. Bright lights in our galaxy, to be sure. But here's a quote from John. He said, "This is a question, and I'll tell you this. No, but they gave me one anyway." That was Coach Spezia'S answering a reporter's question if he ever earned a degree from Eureka College. Okay. And of course, there's a question, how to get a Eureka grad off your front porch, paying for the pizza. And that's all I got. No whistle? All right.
Dan McCarthy. By the way, we do have a couple of administrative notes to take care of. First of all, hopefully most of you have found out by now the bathrooms are not in this room. You do have to go outside and to the right. And then also at 9 o'clock, I understand there's going to be a short break in our program this evening because apparently the Moose have some thing they do at 9 o'clock, and we do have to respect that. Well, I'm not sure what that is, but that's a true story, and so at 9 o'clock there may be a small break for the Mooses to do their Moose thing. So that'll be at 9. Meanwhile, I don't know what that is. I really don't. I swear to you, I have no idea. What Moose do at 9 o'clock. I don't know. Yeah, great. Just what we need, a whole room full of people watching Moose mate at 9 o'clock. Great. Our next guest speaker tonight is someone who knows John way more than any of us ever care to, and that, of course, is Gary Spezia'S.
Yes.
I don't. When I was thinking about what to talk about today, I knew there were two things for sure that would happen. I knew that John would have a lot of friends show up today to support him, and the second thing would be that he's going to wear something green. I'm going to be pretty short. I was thinking about one of my earliest memories with John, and when he was, he graduated from Bismarck Inning in 1968, and I was 7, 8 years old around that time. And one of my earliest memories was he always used to let me hang around, and when he'd go shoot baskets someplace, he'd let me tag along, and he had some friends, and I'd be the little kid hanging around with 3 or 4 or 5 older guys, which was pretty cool for me. But the thing that I remember was that we got to shoot hoops one time. We were up in Bismarck at the intersection of one of the main road and one of the side streets there, and he saw some of his friends and stopped to talk to him for a while. We get out of the car and we're talking for a little while, and there's basketball there, and I start dribbling, and they're talking for a little while. And next thing I know, this basketball goes down into the ditch, and if you can imagine, you remember this, John?
Yeah, he's nodding his head, Dre. Yeah, he does.
The basketball just very, in slow motion, just goes down into the ditch, and then goes into the culvert underneath the street. And if you can imagine, the diameter of that culvert is the same diameter as a basketball. And I'm thinking, and he doesn't quite notice it yet, and I'm thinking, boy, that ball's lost or something. But boy, I got my uncle to bail me out, man. He's gonna help me. He's gonna go down there right and get it. And next thing I know, I go up and tell him about it. I'm kind of afraid to tell him about it. And he looks at it, and he says those 3 or 4 words, just go get it. And what happened was, and it was one of those things you almost had to have been there to really appreciate it, but here I was with my hands above my head, going horizontally down this culvert, and there's just enough room for me to try to shinny down this pipe to get this ball. So I'm trying to pull this ball back with my fingers like this, and I just keep pushing it down, and he pushes me further into the culvert and has me grabbing around my ankles. And I'm thinking, if I go another 6 inches, I'm in here forever. And long story short, we ended up getting it out of there. And I think another name that might come up with that, you were on your way, actually, I think at the time, to see a Judy Park at that time. And John made me sit on the car for the next 2 hours after that. One of the real highlights of my growing up too was we had a hayloft, a barn that we played basketball in. And before it had plywood and lights on it and a free throw lane, it was a really nice place to play. And we used to have people from all around the county come and play. I know that's where I kind of learned to play basketball. But before the plywood was on the floor, John was into everything. I mean, he had every gadget you could think of. He had those little half glasses that you couldn't see when you were dribbling. He had a little shooting glove with something in your palm here so you wouldn't. And these were handmade things. So this was an old work glove that he'd torn the fingers out of and put tape around. And I'll tell you, John used to get after it. He used to play all the time. He used to shoot all the time. And I remember when I was downstairs one time, he was shooting up in the hayloft, and one of his favorite players was Rick Mountain from Purdue. And he used to say, "Rick Mountain 20. And there's nobody else up there but John. Sometime later, and this actually happened before that plywood went up, he went up to shoot a jump shot one time, and one of the 1x6 planks breaks through, and he goes knee deep down one leg and actually goes through the floor. Just two other real quick things, not so funny, but things that certainly had a part in my mind. My senior year in high school was 1979. We were playing for the regional championship up in Rossville. And I talked to John before. I think I had a decent game the game before, and I always liked when he would come watch me play. And he had said something to me, well, he's got some scouting or something to do with it. I believe you were up in Valparaiso at the time, and that he wasn't going to be able to make it. And that kind of bummed me out a little bit. And next thing I knew, the game comes along, and we're out there for pregame warm-ups, and he's sitting right there on the front bench, and it was a nice thing to see. So he always knew these little things to help motivate me too. And one last thing that's kind of related to that, I think one of the strongest things that John's done here is to help his players that have played at the ACC move on to the next level, no matter if it was a Division I, II, or III, or NAIE school. If those kids wanted to continue to play, John would help them play and continue on toward their four-year degree. Well, I was the first of those players, and really appreciate that. Thanks.
Thanks, Jerry. You know, I had heard that story about you and the culvert before. It was interesting, John had told that story before, but he didn't give you the credit for it. He actually said that's how he feels when he goes in to ask Shockey for a raise. He got me by the ankles and he's dipping me in. This may end up being your roast before it's all said and done. I noticed that Dr. Jacobs taking notes. As we build John's story this evening, we begin with his best friend and his family, and now we move to his real first stint into coaching, the Sheldon Rams. And Mike Howard's come down from Sheldon to share a few stories. It looks like he just found out that he's going to get to do this. So, all right, that's good. Spontaneous and fresh. From Sheldon Rams, Mike Howard.
Oh boy, stories about John's face. I heard some talk about motivational things, and he did a lot of that for the fans in Sheldon and for the kids in the locker room. He used to keep a box of old watches. And one day at lunch, I was sitting there, and everybody's giving him a watch. And I said, what's a watch for? And this is what he used to do. I won't do it to my watch, it's not a watch. In the middle of his motivational speech at halftime, he'd rip that watch off and slam it on the floor, and that got everybody's attention. Motivational. All my kids went to Sheldon High School, and he was particularly helpful to one of my daughters who was quite an athlete, and he taught her the drop step and how to play center on the basketball team, and Redmond kept calling fouls on it anyway. big rivalry with Watsika. We're sitting there. And our kids used to freeze when he said the word Watsika. So it's a big town next to us. Well, our girls were playing some kind of championship in volleyball against Watsika. And they were already had that glazed look, you know, you ever see that on players? No, really? And so John told our volleyball coach, who was really the band teacher, so I'll give you a clue. So I'll tell you this, he said, take this sucker, put it in an envelope with a note. This is what we think of you. So sure enough, she did that. And I'm standing at the end of the gym. Everybody thought I was just holding up the wall, but I was smelling for drinkers, you know. And, is that what you do with the door? And, all of a sudden, I hear these lockers like this, and the screaming coming out of the girls' locker room, and bang, they hit the door cracked a brick on the side, and here comes my daughter leading them, looking like a maniac. They had shown this sucker thing, and they thought Watsika did it. She got killed, the poor girl on the other side of the net for the first fight. So that's how he motivates. He also has a good sense of history, and I remember we had an old guy in Sheldon, his name was Harry Brubaker. Rest his soul, he's gone now, but John almost killed him I don't know how many times, and this is how he did it. John decided that Harry was the #1 fan. He was also in, what, 1906? Sheldon team, something like that. So he featured, you know, John, the program, features Harry Brubaker and all the teams in Sheldon. He drove the secretary nuts, you know, the day before the game. Here, we want this 6-page program with, you know, pictures. And this was before copy machines. So he decides that Harry, who came to every home game, who was about 95 and very frail, but he had to climb up the steps and then he'd sit in the stands. And Sheldon had stands on one side, as Brendan will remember, and on the games with Donovan, we put 2 rows of chairs on the other side, and he had a chair painted for Harry. #1 Ram fan, he sat it right in the middle of the floor, in the first row. And guess what? You know, Harry was feeling balls, only at 95, wasn't he off the head, and we thought we didn't know we were going to have to bury Harry or what. Okay, my wife just tugged my jacket before I get the whistle. No. John, thank you. He was the first coach of anybody that I ever saw that really had honor and like kids and like people. And sorry for the serious note, but good job, John.
Okay, we've got another member of the Sheldon staff. Ed Gooden here. Where's Ed? Ed's not here. Good. Scott, your turn.
Boy, he got a quick whistle, I guess, on that. You know, one of the things that so far a couple of people have mentioned is the way John motivates athletes. And we've got quite a few athletes that John at some time has coached and has come back tonight. Not all of them are going to speak here tonight, fortunately. One of them, of course, is Doug.